Good afternoon and welcome back to Stream of Thoughts. So I'm Eric Cuzuzo, and Stream of Thoughts is the new program format of the Kunsten Festival des Arts. It is a program of encounters that accompanies the festival. Due to the current pandemic and the growing collective awareness of the issues and disparities affecting different parts of the world, it has become clear that the conversation must have a global reach while also considering the various local contexts. Stream of Thoughts acknowledges this by taking place online for free and being accessible both live and via a digital archive that will be published once this talk is over. The discussions will be had between speakers who are both in Brussels and some are elsewhere, far and wide. And although it does resonate with different artistic projects within the festival, the discursive program is autonomous, composed of perspective from the artistic, academic, activist, and literary worlds. Acknowledge of the richness created when these disciplines feed off of each other and into one another. For the second episodes right now, audiovisual artist Korakrit Arunanondchai, currently presenting the piece No History is a Room Filled with People with Funny Names 5 in Brigittines, which is a co-creation with Alex Vojic, will take us along an hour of screenings and a selection of work and conversation around it with Brussels-based curator Diana Campbell Betancourt. Together, they will explore Arunanondchai incredibly visionary work and his investigation into the topics of nationalism and beliefs. I will be in the chat as Eric Cuzuzo, so please join me there and react to the conversation and answer questions in the chat during the live stream, and Diana will share them with Krit. I will now give the floor to Diana and Korakrit. Have a good live stream.
Much, Eric, and hi, Krit. It's lovely to see you online. I was thinking our journey working together on the work together in Dhaka began in Brussels. Do you remember? We met at Clearing when you were sharing No History. I think it was part 4, correct?
Yeah, it was with history in a room filled with people with funny names for the one right before this one we're showing. Yeah,
exactly. So it's an interesting kind of in time, like to talk in Brussels about creating work in Bangladesh. And we'll get into this a bit more later, but for our audience that maybe doesn't understand so much about the geopolitics of Southeast Asia, Thailand and Bangladesh are quite close to each other geographically, but they're rarely brought together in these kind of regional forums because kind of Southeast Asia is a Cold War term that applies to a certain area. South Asia is a term that is linked to British colonial past. And somehow, even though they have rivers that bleed into each other and stories that bleed into each other, they're not really brought under, they're usually kept within silos. So for me, it was a real pleasure to work with you, Krit, and to see how these stories of Nagas and stories of erased history is connected.
Right, yeah. Personally, up until I actually didn't realize that Bangladesh and Dhaka and Bangkok were that close until, I think my connection, the thread that pulled me into actually, even though it was really, trying to actually do a project, a research project in the Sundarbans, and I hope to still go one day. But I think the stories that really unite where I'm from, Bangkok and Dhaka, and which I didn't realize until I got there, was the rivers, right? Like the Nagas is essentially these snake-like rivers that kind of feed the city and run through the entire city and all the myths around it. I think that's for me, that was a big connection. That was what we brought to the Dakar Art Summit, was actually this, the story about the Naga and the snake.
Absolutely. And so maybe to give people an entry point, because I'm sure not everyone has seen your piece at the Kunsten Festival at Brigittines, together, which we realized in Dhaka, and the work that's showing at the Kunsten Festival, No History in a Room Filled with People with Funny Names, Part 5, are linked. So maybe We can start, Eric, by giving the audience a glimpse into what we produced in Dhaka, and then we can talk a bit about how this relates to the work in Brussels, but also to Krit's wider concerns. Eric?
Play video.
Great.
About the urns. These are the animals that go back to when Alex was little. And we save the ashes of all the animals that were important to us. When I die, I just want my ashes and theirs all mixed together. It's not that I believed that their spirits are in here. It's just a representation of an animal that was in my life that was important to me, that I learned something from, had a relationship with, and shared their lives with me.
สู่โลกแห่งผีเรื่องเล่าที่ดีจากเวลาไม่นานมานี้ว่าแก่นแท้ของผู้ดูแลและผู้ที่ได้รับการดูแลลงเอยในที่เดียวกัน
such a great memory revisiting that piece via that clip.
It's been more than a year.
Yeah, and for the audience, what you can't really see in that clip is that there are tens of thousands of people. I want to say like probably there were about 20,000 people, not at the same time. We had thousands and thousands of people watching this piece on 3 floors. And Korakrit transformed the staircase, which was kind of a central artery of the building, which normally gets covered up, into this monumental sculpture of a snake. So this kind of held the space. And at 7 o'clock, when the performance happened, all the lights and sound on every other work went off, and the entire Dhaka Art Summit became a stage for this piece. But the way that the audience became kind of possessed, in the way that the figures in the film become possessed, and the way that the performers become possessed, the kind of meta link was super special.
But yeah, I mean, originally with the I think in this particular Dhaka version, it was harder to do. But in the version we did in New York, actually the performers were all like first part of the audience. You know, they weren't painted white, and as they would kind of start to join, it was almost as if like at the beginning, the main storyteller, which was me, was the one being possessed, and as kind of the storytelling progresses, you know, this spirit of this green light, or the color green itself, would start to possess the different characters. Here it felt, you know, like I think the really interesting thing about the performance in Dhaka was that, you know, we had a very, I think a lot of gaps in language, a very limited amount of time to practice, but so much raw energy. And he's sort of like I actually preferred so much the version of Together that was performed in Dhaka than actually in New York. I felt like I learned something about perhaps like ritual making, like the space of creating a stage, or a scenario for ritual making to happen, where I think it involves like a kind of you know, I think the space, it's almost like in the video we talk about either the cave or the really dark forest at night as a space, you know, where kind of like gaps occur in storytelling, or where ghosts can tell stories, you know, for like no better word. And I think somehow in Dhaka, like the kind, there is a certain kind of like opacity, you know, like I think like with the architecture of the school, like you're kind of like watching from all these different angles. Like I think it was it just felt like there was more kind of like, you know, it felt more opaque. And I think like it felt, I really like even the gaps between me and the performer and what is the script, like, you know, at the moments when I was in the performance and like I